The practical understanding of creating results. One thing that I notice looking at people around me is that generally speaking, people are really bad at generating results, and this is very important. If you want to self actualize, you need to become a results maker. I don't know if you realize this, if you've noticed, but the world runs on results, whether it's business or money or career or fitness or even your internal mood. All that stuff is a result. Everything that you're looking for in life is a result. So if you can't do this, if you're not a results maker and you don't have this in your pedigree to be able to go out there and achieve extraordinary results, uncommon results, then basically you have problem in life. You see how this is a very fundamental problem. And then most people who are having problems in life, like getting their finances or getting the relationship or getting whatever other facet of their life, it's because they're poor results makers. It's not because they are bad in that one particular facet, although that can certainly be the case, but it's more general than that. It's like you're sad at making results happen, you're not a results maker. And you want this kind of pedigree, so that you can say to yourself, you know, I've made big results happen in the past, whether it was my relationship or with my internal mood, with my finances or with whatever, and that I can trust myself to make big results happen in the future. This is like an attitude thing. It's an attitude you take towards life. So what I want to talk about here is I want to give you a little bit of deeper understanding of the mindsets and attitudes that a results maker takes towards life, why this is important, and then I want to give you a very juicy list of ways that you can adopt. Some of these results maker give you a whole nice juicy list. So when we talk about self-actualizing, when we talk about living up to your full potential, do you realize what that actually entails? That entails getting results, not just dreams and ideas and theories, because yeah, those things are nice and you could argue that everything starts as a dream at first, but the problems that many people just get lost in the dreams and the theories. What's interesting is that modern day society in a sense makes it easy for us to lose sight of results. Because what you can do is you can just kind of go with the flow of society, and you can just go get your standard 9 to 5 jobs, some basic career, just kind of work that and live and survive. You can even maybe thrive in that kind of environment because life's pretty easy these days. It's not like it was 10,000 years ago. Think about what it was like 10,000 years ago. 10,000 years ago, you couldn't just plug yourself into the system. 10,000 years ago, it was like create results or die, and a good way to prove this to yourself as you try just going on a camping trip for a couple of weeks, maybe for a whole month, or at least do this in your mind. If you're not going to do it in practice, do it in your mind right now. Imagine you go on a camping trip and it's just you and nobody else, no one to help you. You don't have any food with you. All you have is a tent, a knife, and a gun. That's all you get. Maybe you got a canteen for some water. That's it. Now, what are you going to do to survive for that whole month out there in the wilderness by yourself? Well, you're going to have to create some results, aren't you? You're going to have to go first of all find some water, because if you don't get water within 2 days, you're going to be dead. So you got to go find a good clean source of water. Make sure that it's actually clean. If you find a bad source of water and drink it, you're going to die within a few days. If you don't find water, you're going to die within a few days. So there's just that. Then you're going to start to go hungry, so you have to go and hunt using your rifle. Now you got actually learn how to shoot the rifle. You actually got to learn how to sneak up on animals, find the animals in the wilderness, because it's not like animals are just running around and waiting for you to shoot them. You got to spot them first, track them down, and then after you shoot them, you got to clean them up, make sure they're edible. You got to use a knife to skin the animal, got to cook it somehow, got to start a fire somehow, right? And you don't just know how to do that once, but you got to keep doing that consistently. In fact, you got to probably shoot half a dozen animals a day in order to feed yourself just for that one day, because hunting requires a lot of expenditure of energy. So that's just the basics there, but then you also need shelter. So you've got to build yourself some kind of shelter, make sure that it's not getting like overheated by the heat by the sun. So it's not getting too cold at night, and you got to manage all of that, and you got to be actually creating a certain result, because in the wilderness if you're not getting the result, then basically you're dead. Something's going to kill you at some point. Now it was easier to be in touch with that 10,000 years ago than it is now, because nowadays if you just kind of let yourself go, society will kind of take care of you. And even in the worst case scenario, like a bum on the street who doesn't have a place to live, still you know they have a lot of luxuries these days that you wouldn't have 10,000 years ago. So that's one problem, right? The other interesting fast this is that I find that there's this interesting dynamic going on here of why people are not good results makers, and it's because they don't hold their own feet to the fire of reality. That's what I call it. So what I noticed in myself, especially when I was younger, is that I would come up with cool ideas and dreams for like a business that I want to start, or how my career is going to go, or for how I'm going to earn a lot of money or travel somewhere, do some cool things. So I would, have these ambitions, but then what would happen is that I would spend a lot of time thinking about this and planning it all out, but that was like me living in my little bubble, my fantasy bubble. It wasn't connected to reality anyway. My feet weren't getting held to the fire reality. Then what happened is I was getting older and older and older, and I started to get out of college, and I started to actually have to go into the job market, find myself a real job, actually start paying my bills, that sort of thing. All the sudden it's like, oh, now the rubber meets the road, and now all my dreams are suddenly shattered and thrown out the window, because there's no way they could work in real life. Because now what happens is that the bubble like touches the edge of reality, and when it does, that usually bursts because the bubble is not strong enough. How do I get readapt my beliefs and my dreams and my ambitions to actually what will work in the real world? Because you try to get something to actually work in the real world, you discover like, oh well, the marketplace doesn't want this project that I was dreaming up, no one wants to buy it. Or it's like, well, I thought I could charge $1,000 for it, and it turns out that people don't even want to pay $50 for it. Turns out people don't even want it for free. Oh, I didn't anticipate that. Oh, that's how markets actually work. What am I going to do now? And now you have to scramble. And the interesting psychological dynamic here is that it's emotionally disturbing and uncomfortable for us to have our bubbles popped. We don't like it. We like to live in Fantasyland, and so what a lot of people do, I suspect, is that they live in Fantasyland, but then they never ground themselves, because this grounding process, it doesn't just happen once. You have to keep doing it again and again and again and again. And this is what a really good results maker is able to do, is he's able to hold his own feet to the fire, whereas the other people, what they are is they're just dreamers. There are dreamers and they're big talkers, and they talk a lot of nonsense, but they don't actually get anything accomplished. And I think that one of my personal strengths is that I am results oriented, and for me this happened actually, there was like a shift in my life when this happened, because I used to be very big dreamer throughout middle school and high school and as a college, and then was after college, I had to get very serious, had to start going off on my own, leave the family nest, and this shift happened psychologically within me, where I kind of had to bite the bullet and tell myself, if I want these dreams to actually get accomplished, if I really value my dreams, then that means I have to be willing to do what's necessary to be done, and that's usually dirty work. I have to be willing to get into the mud, get myself dirty in order to translate the dream into reality. And that translation process, that's a very messy, dirty, emotionally difficult thing to undertake. Because what has to happen is, first of all, you have to be flexible enough to relinquish a lot of your fantasies and beliefs. Because here's the cool thing about reality, is that reality doesn't change for you. You got to change for reality. Now there's really two options that you have. One is you can come up with all these cool dreams, and then when you try to implement them within reality, you see that, oh, It's not working, and then you have a choice. You could say, okay, it's not working, so let me just go and fantasize some more and forget about this whole thing of trying to make my dreams real. Let me just not do that. It's kind of painful, kind of unpleasant and uncomfortable. I want to go through all that. So that's one option. That's the emotionally easy option. Then there's the emotionally difficult option, which is to say, and this is the mature option, which is to say, man, I was really misguided about my understandings of reality. I thought this thing would fly. It's not going to fly, not even close. Let me go back to the drawing board. Let me think of a new idea. Let me not only just do that, but also let me intro what kind of beliefs do I hold about the world which are making it impossible for me to make this project actually fly in the real world. Oh yeah, I've got a couple of those beliefs. I can see now how those beliefs are probably wrong, but man, I don't want to give up those beliefs. Oh man, but I have to give up those beliefs if I want to make this work. And so basically what happens is that you have to mature and you have to evolve and you have to let go of your old dogmas about the way you think things should work, and then actually you have to be humble enough to let reality work on you. This is what I call holding your feet to the fire of reality, and it's an emotionally painful thing. You know, for me, I discovered this when I started to work within the video game industry, and one thing I want is I want to create these cool games, but you know, creating cool games cost lots of money, takes lots of work, and when I quickly realizes that all my fancy ideas for games that I've been dreaming up for the last 5 or 10 years, that a lot of those are not going to fly, and I'm enough to make a lot of sacrifices to make some of those work, right? And that's when my face, not just my feet, but like my face got smashed into real, and that was painful, that was difficult, and it's disillusioning, right? Disillusioning when people tell you that, oh, I used to be idealistic like you, but then you know reality showed up, and now I have to lower my expectations, lower my dreams and all that stuff. Well, you could do that, and some people, they do is they just keep living in their fantasy bubbles, and then they don't actually admit to themselves that all the nonsense that they're fantasizing isn't getting translated into real results. It's interesting because I talked about the Claire Graves stages in my science versus religion video, so if you watch that one, then you know what I'm talking about here, which is stage green. Stage green is a certain stereotype of people, a certain level of a psychological development. Actually, it's a pretty high level. Most people aren't even at green, but the green stage is stereotyped as the hippie or the new ager. And what's interesting about these people is that they really have this sense of concern for the world, right? So their circle of concern increases, so that they don't just care about themselves selfishly, but now they care about other countries and societies and other people and even animals. So that's a cool thing. And also what happens is that they become empathizers. They start actually caring, and they have genuine concern about the emotions and feelings and suffering of other people, right? So these people usually are interested in like charitable causes like saving the whales and saving the polar bears and helping poor children Africa. So right, and that's a good intention, but one of the problems with this stage green is that even though these people have really good intentions and they're very like idealistic and they want to come together and share ideas and they want to talk it out and they want to come up with a plan for how to live in harmony and in peace and so that everybody loves each other, right? They're not actually good results makers. And so what happens in practice is that they come together, sit in a circle, and they sing Kumbaya, and they talk about how everyone should live in peace and everyone should love each other and how we are going to save the environments and save the whales and do all this nice stuff. But then in reality what happens is that you just have that moment of sitting in a circle and then everyone disperses, goes home, and nothing actually changes in the real world. So they're not very good results makers. Are you that way in your life? Do you talk a lot of nonsense but then don't get anything done? Do you have a pedigree of creating results? That's very important. If you really want to create either success or even happiness, you might think like, well, happiness doesn't depend on creating all these tangible results, but actually it does. And in fact, these green hippie people who like to preach spirituality and how spiritual they are, and who also are very big into relationships, they also talk about how connected they are to everybody else, and they very much value intimacy and relationships and communication. Well, these things, spirituality and relationships, these are actually categories within which it takes serious results making to get good results. It's one thing to talk about how you're going to have this loving relationship, and then it's another totally different thing to actually have a loving relationship and to actually engineer that, to design it, to make it happen, because a loving, intimate relationship doesn't happen by accident. That takes a lot of skill to develop, that you need to develop yourself as a human being in order to be able to sustain a really high quality intimate relationship. And a lot of times these hippie people, they might talk about relationships and how great they are, but then in practice take a look at their lives and you see that, oh man, their relationships are nonsense. Or spirituality, they might talk about how spiritual they are and yada yada yada, talk about chakras and energy and love and all these fancy spiritual concepts, but then you actually take a look at them. Are they actually spiritually developed? Do they actually understand? Are they conscious of their own ego and all the illusions that are happening there? And what you find is oftentimes they're not. In fact, what they're doing is they're using all this spiritual talk as a way to muddy the waters so that they can distract themselves from having to look at the fact that actually in reality they aren't spiritual at all. This is what I mean by holding your feet to the fire. What you need to do is a results maker. If you want to really be a results maker and self-actualized, you need to bite this bullet at some point in your life, and you got to save yourself, man. Okay, I can't be one of these people who just dreams nonsense up and then doesn't make it happen. I got to bite the bullet on this, and I got to get humbled by reality. Like, if reality wants to beat my face to a bloody pulp, then I'm willing to take those hard knocks, because that's worth it to me, because I actually care about getting my dreams realized. And then you actually got to take those knocks and pay that cost, and what that might mean for you is giving up some of your very cherished beliefs that you're clean to, or reconciling some of the issues you've got with money, or the way that the economy works, or the way politics works, or the way that relationships actually work, not your fantasy ideal of how love works and how everyone should love each other unconditionally, because that nonsense doesn't happen in real life. In an intimate relationship, an intimate relationship is not unconditional love, it's a very selfish kind of love. It's really like a business negotiation is what it is. But do you have the balls to admit that to yourself? Should hit that and then work within that and then transcend that. That takes some real doing, right? And that requires a willingness on your part to take on the burden of expending emotional labor to make this stuff happen, which is what most people are not willing to do. So instead of talking a bunch of nonsense, what I like from you is to actually do the things and ask yourself to get the real results that you want. So if you're going to start a small business, go start the business. Stop talking nonsense about it. If you want to go earn more money and take care of your finances, shut the nonsense up and go take care of your finances, so that actually the numbers in your bank account are increasing. That's the thing that you should be judging yourself on, not how well you can talk or how well you can dream some nonsense up. If you want to move to a new country, when you actually move to that new country, that's when it counts. Before then it's just a bunch of talk. Same thing with losing weight, same thing with your relationships, same thing with your happiness levels. Are you actually increasing your happiness levels? Are you just talking a bunch of nonsense? Enlightenment, are you pursuing Are you really pursuing alignment, or you just talking too much nonsense about alignment? You need to shut the nonsense up. Do less talking and more doing. And when you do doing, don't confuse just doing for results. There's a very big difference between just doing stuff and getting results, because you could do certain things that will never generate a result at all. In fact, a lot of people make this mistake. A results maker makes this distinction very clear in his mind. If I'm doing something and it's not getting thing you're generating a result within a week or two. I got to change that nonsense up so that I'm doing something else, kind of change my approach. Can't get stuck. A lot of people, they get stuck in these cycles where they're just doing stuff, they think it's going to produce something later and then it never produces anything, and they don't want to change because change is emotionally difficult. Now let me make the counterpoint, which is that some people might listen to this and say, okay Willie, oh you're really hammering on results, but isn't there more to life than just results? And the answer of course is yes, there is more to life than just results. So I don't want you to take my point here as being that you got to be now this neurotic results maker only focusing on results everywhere. No, but first what you got to do is, I think you got to build a pedigree of creating results. After you've done that and you've proven that you're a results maker and results focused, but I think for most people what they need more of is they need more of this results making mentality, because the results making is usually the hard thing. It's the emotionally difficult thing. Just sitting back and relaxing, in a sense that can be emotionally difficult to actually properly relax. You know, if you're a workaholic type who's always working his ass off, then you probably actually have this opposite problem, which is that you can't sit back and just relax and enjoy yourself. So for you, maybe you got to swing the pendulum the opposite way, but for many people that's not the case. So I'm not telling you here to become a workaholic necessarily. You don't need to work yourself to death, but you do need to develop this kind of mentality. It's a mentality thing. So with that said, how do you actually do this? Let me give you a good juicy list. Here's how a results maker thinks. So the first thing is that you actually have to value tangible results. This is a mindset thing, an attitude thing. So for example, if you're an employer and your employees are coming to you with stuff they're supposed to be doing for you, right? You have to be the one that actually sets the standard for tangible results being created. If you're an employee right now, well, one thing you can do is, again, you can start to value tangible results. Are the people around you creating tangible results? Are you holding yourself to that standard of I got to create tangible results, otherwise I'm not really doing anything? That's the first thing. The second thing is you actually have to create nonsense. Seems a bit crafts and oversimplified, but it really is this simple. Are you a creator in your life, or are you doing something else? For me, I am creatively minded. I am also project minded. What this means is I see my life as a series of projects that I am working on, and I find this is a very useful mindset for creating results, because if you are like an average person who doesn't think about their life as a series of projects and instead just thinks of it like, oh yeah, I got my job and I'm just going to keep doing that while it pays me money, and maybe later I'll get a new job and I'll just keep bouncing from job to job and just kind of survive that way. If you're that kind of person, you're going to suck at generating results. See, the way I think about it is like this. Okay, I got a project that's due 6 months from now. I got to release this product. If I create this product and I release this product, then I'm going to go on and create the next product. Then maybe I am going to go create this business. Then I am going to start a new business 2 years after that, and so on and so forth. Those projects are like specific tangible things I got to put out at the real world, whether it's a website, a blog, a video course, a set of audios, a book I want to write, or whatever. That's how I think of my life, is like in terms of these milestone projects which I want myself completing every 6 or 12 months or so, right? Some of them are small or some of them are bigger, but that's important. Start thinking of your life in terms of projects. What are you actually creating in the next 6 months? Is it a tangible thing? When it's a tangible thing, that means you got to actually make it, because then it's very clear in your mind that if you don't make it within the next 6 months, you failed. Now, if you never said that tangible thing in the first place, then it's like, well, you can't even tell whether you failed or not, because you had nothing you were working working towards. Another point, desire to impact people. For me this is huge. Personally this is the reason why I want to be a results maker, is because I want to actually change how people think and what they feel, and I want to change the world. To have an impact on the world you need to actually create something that is the impact. So by definition you have to be a results maker if you want to create impact. Now for me that's because I actually want to change people, or I want to change something, whether it's creating a more beautiful piece of art, or whether it's writing a cool blog post, or creating a new video that's going to change someone's mind, right? The video has to be created in order for someone's mind to change. Someone's mind is not going to change just for me sitting and dreaming nonsense up. Most people, though, they don't care about impacting anyone. All they want is they want a cushy life. If all you want is a cushy life, you're going to be terrible at making results, because you really don't have a strong enough motivation to create results. When you have a real valid reason to be creating work which is connected to your life purpose, well then you can go out there and really make some strong result. Tap. Next point is something I call talk is cheap, and it really is. People tell me all the time, I want to start this charity organization, it's going to transform the world, or I on a cure AIDS in Africa. But all this is talk, is just talk. Like 1 in 100 people will be serious when they're telling you this stuff. The other 99% are just jokers, just talking nonsense. So in my mind what I've done a long time ago is I've totally discounted talk. When someone tells me they're going to do something, in my mind it means nothing. It's like empty, just sounds. You're going to do something. Don't tell me you're going to do something. Go nonsense, do it. Don't tell me you're going to lose 20 pounds. Go lose the nonsense 20 pounds. Then come talk to me about it. Don't tell me you're going to write a book. Write the book, then come show it to me. Then we can talk. Oftentimes talk is just a distraction from holding your feet to the fire. Another point is work for excellence. Value excellence for its own sake. Want to be putting out the best you can be putting out. It's crazy to me because I work with contractors sometimes that help me do stuff for my business, and I've worked with contractors for a long time and other businesses that I've had, and basically they are either writing stuff for me or doing some coding or whatever tasks I have them do, but then they submit their work in. Their work is just like this sloppy work. Now granted, I don't always pay them that much to be doing the most beautiful work ever, but still it's sloppy work. You would be ashamed to submit that kind of work to a boss or somebody. It's just crap work. No excellence is put into it. It's like they don't value excellence. If you don't value excellence, then how can you be a strong results maker? Another point is take personal responsibility for making it happen. Whatever it is, losing weight, starting a business and project at work, earning more money for somebody, whatever, personal responsibility has to be taken. You have to believe that it's your job. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Stop waiting for somebody else to lead you, to show you the way, to tell you what to do. If there's some initiative at work that needs doing, step up and do it. Take personal responsibility. I always assume that if I don't get it done, it'll never get done and no one will do it for me. That's like my general operating principle for life. Whatever it is, I have to do it. Sometimes I can even get a little neurotic where it's even difficult for me to work with other people because I just tend to assume that they're inherently unreliable, because a lot of them are, but there's still an art to finding reliable. You can find reliable people, so don't let that be a limiting belief. Another important point is working the big picture. A results maker is powerful because he has a big picture, high level understanding of what we are working towards and why we are working towards it. There's like a purpose behind what he's doing. He's not just doing some menial labor for somebody else just because he's going to get paid for it. That's a terrible way to go about it. Instead, it's like he can see from 1,000 1,000-foot elevation. What needs to be done, why needs to be done. I think that's another attribute that I have that some contributed to my success in life, is that I'm always looking at the big picture. Why am I doing this? How is this thing going to play into the next thing, and how is that going to connect with my long-term vision for my life and for how I want to impact the world? A lot of people don't think this way. You have to start thinking that way. The next point is work ethic. You got to just build a strong work ethic, and that's something that's lacking these days, because again, in modern society, especially kids growing up these days, we are so spoiled with all the nonsense that we get all the free entertainment and free this and free that. Everything's taken for granted. Just think back even a couple generations ago, 100 years ago, when your great grandparents were alive, the kind of work ethics that people had then, mind blowing. It's amazing. Sometimes I read books about successful people in the past. Think about something like Benjamin Franklin or Nikola Tesla, people that lived a couple 100 years ago, of Thomas Edison or Thomas Jefferson. What these people were able to accomplish in their lives is amazing, and they had to work through a lot more nonsense than we have to do these days. It was a lot harder back then, but they had these incredible work ethics. They were like work mules, these guys. That's rare these days. It's tough to develop that, especially in our modern culture. Our culture is very much focused on spoiling us and making us comfortable, and it really devalues work ethics. So you have to go against the grain on this, and you have to be willing to use brute force. That's something I've always left open as an option, is that if there's some result that I want to get to and I can see that I can just brute force my way with work to get to that result, then I'll just do it. I'll gravitate towards doing it. Whereas what I see with some people is that it's yes, we could accomplish this goal by brute force, but it's oh well, I don't want to brute force. Said isn't there a shortcut? Isn't there some magic solution? Do I really have to sit there for 5 hours and just hammer on this thing until it gets done? I don't want to do that. And so what they say is, yeah, let me go look for another approach, and then they never find that approach and they never get anything done. Now, this is not to say again that you have to be a workaholic and work stupid. No, you work smart. You don't want to be just working for work's sake and doing a bunch of menial labor. But if you can see that menial labor, by doing it for a short period of time, can get you to the next level, then you have to be willing to go there and do it. That's brute force. Next point, sacrifice comfort. A lot of times you've got to sacrifice some of your own personal comfort to generate some powerful result in life. Maybe you got to stay up late to finish writing this book for the publishing milestone, or maybe you got to skip your next vacation in order to do something and advance yourself. Well, are you willing to do that, or are you living life just for comfort? If your life is lived for comfort, then your life is going to actually very ironically be a very miserable life, because it's like this. It's like the self-serving, ego indulgence. It's like hedonism, and hedonism counterintuitively doesn't actually produce the greatest happiness. So watch out for that next point, which is a really important one. You have to be willing to change. Not willing to do this. Most people, they'll go as far as kind of getting up to their edge of their comfort zone and saying, okay, well, this is the edge of what I could possibly do, so that's it, I've maxed myself out. No, the real results maker, what he does is he says, well, right now I'm only capable of going here, but my result is 5 steps beyond my current ability level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transform my entire psyche as necessary to get those 5 steps extra that I can't get to right now. Whatever takes, building skills, reading books, taking coaching seminars, studying, practicing, research, all that stuff. Not just that stuff is basic. That's it's like a mandatory thing. You've got to learn technical skills to get good at what you want to create. I'm talking about even going further than that, like dropping entire chunks of belief systems out of your world, like deep psychological changes, right? Changing how you view the entire cosmos, your thoughts on God and on physics and on science. All this nonsense I found has to be changed in order to really become an amazing results maker, and it's hard for most people to see that. Why are these changes necessary, right? These changes seem so deep and so abstract and so loosely connected to being able to generate practical results, but for me it's all interconnected. For example, if you're a very dogmatic person, if you're not able to be very open-minded, you're going to have a difficult time generating the best results you possibly can, and most people are so dogmatic. Marketplace, because when you first start your own business you have these fancy business ideas, but then what happens is then you write up, let's say you write up this cool nifty business plan, and what happens is you actually go and you try to implement it and it all goes to nonsense. None of it works. No one's willing to pay you a dime. Your marketing doesn't work here. You're not able to attract a single client. No one's interested in your stuff even for free. They don't care. And then that's when you have that real big eye opener. It's like, oh nonsense, I really don't understand how the marketplace works. My understanding of the marketplace is so childish. It has to really mature, and that's where your feet get just burned on that fire. And that burning, that's a good thing. See, most people when they feel that burn, they don't like it. It's not comfortable to them, so they run away and they feel like, oh, the burn is bad. But actually the secret to life is that the burn is good. You have to train yourself to love that burn in a kind of masochistic, sadistic sort of way, right? Just don't take it over the top. For me, starting my own business was really big. That was the point where I really took on the challenge, bit the bullet, and said, okay, I'm going to figure it out somehow, and I'm going to take full responsibility, right? And the stakes were so high that I had to figure it out, because literally, and I left my 9 to 5 job, and then what happened was that if I was going to be earning money, if I wasn't going to be able to attract the clients and actually get dollars in my bank account, then I would be homeless within a relatively brief period of time. So that really lit a fire under my ass, and the stakes were high. And when the stakes are that high, then what happens that your ego relents and it surrenders and it says, okay, I'll change myself to live. I'll change myself to live. So take that leap if you really want to master results making. In the last point I'm going to say is, think about your death. It's a little odd. Think about your death. How does that help you be a results maker? Well, for me, very directly. In fact, I find myself thinking about my own death on a daily basis nowadays, like just randomly thinking about my own death, how I'm going to die. Like maybe I'll get killed by a meteor landing and smashing into the earth tomorrow, and I won't even wake up to know. I'll just burn away, or some nuclear war starts while I'm asleep and then I never even wake up to see it. To me, this is important because it shows me how little time I have to get nonsense done. I don't have eternity, a very short window within which to make my results happen. So this makes me focused on generating results, right? My own death. This is something that most people don't do, is they don't really think about this stuff. In fact, they actively try to distract themselves from thinking about their own death so that they can pretend that they have forever to live. And then when they think that they have forever to live, they don't do anything. They piss away all their time, piss away their youth, and then when they're old and in their 60s and 70s, then they start with all the regrets and all the nonsense that they should have done when they were younger, and yada yada. We know how it works, right? Don't fall into that trap. Think about your death often so that you're reminded of how little time you actually have. So that's my list. Hey. marketplace, because when you first start your own business you have these fancy business ideas, but then what happens is then you write up, let's say you write up this cool nifty business plan, and what happens is you actually go and you try to implement it and it all goes to nonsense, none of it works, no one's willing to pay you a dime, your marketing doesn't work here, you're not able to attract a single client, no one's interested in your stuff even for free, they don't care, and then that's when you have that real big eye-opener. It's like, oh nonsense, I really don't understand how the marketplace works, my understanding of the marketplace is so childish, it has to really mature, and that's where your feet get just burned on that fire, and that burning, that's a good thing. See, most people when they feel that burn they don't like it, it's not comfortable to them, so they run away and they feel like, oh, the burn is bad, but actually the secret to life is that the burn is good. You have to train yourself to allow that burn in a kind of masochistic, sadistic sort of way, right? Just don't take it over the top. For me, starting my own business was really big. That was the point where I really took on the challenge, bit the bullet, and said, okay, I'm going to figure it out somehow, and I'm going to take full responsibility, right? And the stakes were so high that I had to figure it out, because literally, and I left my 9 to 5 job, and then what happened was that if I was going to be earning money, if I wasn't going to be able to attract the clients and actually get dollars in my bank account, then I would be homeless within a relatively brief period of time. So that really lit a fire under my ass, and the stakes were high, and when the stakes are that high, then what happens that usually your ego relents and it surrenders and it says, okay, I'll change myself to live, I'll change myself to live. So take that leap if you really want to master results making. In the last point I'm going to say is, think about your death. It's a little odd, think about your death. How does that help you be a results maker? Well, for me, very directly. In fact, I find myself thinking about my own death on a daily basis nowadays, like just randomly thinking about my own death, how I'm going to die, like maybe I'll get killed by a meteor landing and smashing into the earth tomorrow, and I won't even wake up to know, I'll just burn away, or some nuclear war starts while I'm asleep and then I never even wake up to see it. To me, this is important because it shows me how little time I have to get nonsense done. I don't have eternity, a very short window within which to make my results happen, so this makes me focused on generating results, right? My own death, this is something that most people don't do, is they don't really think about this stuff. In fact, they actively try to distract themselves from thinking about their own death so that they can pretend that they have forever to live, and then when they think that they have forever to live, they don't do anything, they piss away all their time, piss away their youth, and then when they're old and in their 60s and 70s, then they start with all the regrets and all the nonsense that they should have done when they were younger, and yada yada. We know how it works, right? Don't fall into that trap. Think about your death often so that you're reminded of how little time you actually have. So that's my list. Point in all this, and what I want you to take away from this video is simply that you need to get off your ass now. If you've been falling into this route of watching a lot of my videos thinking that they're making you smarter and cooler and all this stuff, stop that nonsense. Take action on the things I'm telling you. Every video you should be thinking about, how can I take action on it? And your ratio of watching my videos to taking action should be like 10 to 1, 10 times action taking one part, watching a video, right? Whatever you want. What is it? A career, more money, relationship, happiness? Meditate better, decide the result that you want, make a project out of it, get off your ass, start doing it, hold your feet to the fire, feel that burn and learn to love that burn.